Frugality has a bad reputation, and some people assume it means sacrifice, deprivation, and a lifetime of penny pinching misery. But the truth is, we've been making it harder than it has to be. The real problem is that most people treat frugality as a constant battle of willpower. So they force themselves into extreme budgeting, obsess over cutting every little expense, and they guilt themselves for spending on anything enjoyable, in which case, it's no wonder it feels exhausting. But frugality isn't about suffering, it's about strategy. And ultimately, the goal should really be to design a life where saving money feels natural and effortless and not a daily struggle. So if being frugal feels like a burden, there is a good chance that you're doing it wrong. And instead, you need to redefine what feels normal. One of the biggest reasons why some people struggle with frugality is because they're surrounded by a culture of spending. So if everyone around you eats out multiple times a week, or they're constantly upgrading their stuff, or they're always shopping, anything less than that might feel like deprivation or not normal. But one thing to keep in mind is that spending can be relative. So what feels normal really depends on what you're used to. And with that being said, if you want frugality to feel easier, you might have to shift your baseline. And one of the best ways to do this is to surround yourself with frugal influences. So if you spend so much time watching or hanging out with people who feel as if they always have to spend money, being frugal will always feel like a struggle. So what you have to do instead is watch your association and spend time with people who make simple living look appealing. Because it becomes so much easier to spend less when you and your friends are on the same page and have similar goals. Likewise, you can also create new personal routines for yourself. So if Friday and Saturday nights used to mean dinner and drinks at a restaurant, you can replace it with a new ritual, such as only going out one night a week, or making pizzas at home, or having a game night. And you'll quickly see that once you adjust your definition of normal, frugality stops feeling like a sacrifice and it just becomes a way that you live. You also need to get into a routine of making high value purchases and not just cheap ones. And I realize that for a lot of people, you can only do what you can afford to do. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who confuse frugality with always buying the cheapest option. But this isn't about spending as little as possible. It's about maximizing your value. And ironically, many frugal people end up wasting more money by always choosing the lowest price option of everything, even when they can afford to spend a little more and get quality. So they might buy low quality items that break easily, bulk items they never actually use, or cheap t-shirts that look worn out after just a few washes, which is something that I'm also guilty of. But even though these moves can save money in the moment, they often end up costing more in the long run. So for those items that you know you'll use often, it might make sense to pay a little more and get more bang for your buck. And one thing that you can do is adopt a cost per use mindset. So instead of only looking at the upfront price, calculate how much something costs per use. For example, a $40 item that'll last several years is probably a better deal than a $15 cheaper version that doesn't have all the features you need or that you'll need to replace every year. The bottom line is that when you start to focus on value instead of just the price, frugality can start to feel smarter and not restrictive. And finally, you have to find joy in what you have. And this is so simple, yet it's something that a lot of people don't do. Many people focus on what frugality takes away, but the real key is learning how to enjoy what you already have. Consumer culture thrives on dissatisfaction, where we're constantly being fed that we need the newest, best, and most upgraded version of everything. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you truly want to succeed as a frugal person, you can't just resist that message, you have to reject it entirely. So before buying anything, take just a few minutes and take stock of what you already have, because repurposing, reorganizing, or simply appreciating your possessions can make them feel new again. And as far as not immediately replacing something, if you do have an item that's beyond repair, try living without it for a few weeks and see how it goes, because you might realize that you don't really need the item after all, in which case you would have saved money and freed up space. The bottom line is that frugality doesn't have to feel like deprivation, and if it does, that means that you're probably doing it the hard way. Because the goal isn't just to spend less, it's to create a lifestyle where saving money happens automatically without stress, struggle, or extreme sacrifices.